So that really segues nice into what I wanted to talk about as far as developing bulls. Is there anything else that you think producers who are developing bulls really need to be cognizant of to just optimize that fertility of that bull and set the animal up for success?
Yeah, so there's really some great opportunities within a bull's life to really set him up for success. We know that what happens nutritionally and developmentally to bulls in those first 6 months of life really impact him for the rest of his life as a bull. So if we think about within the testicle, we have different types of cells that support our sperm production, and a lot of those cell populations are developed before that bull is 6 week or 6 months of age. And so really making sure that bull has high quality nutrition. If we're ever going to think about creep feeding bulls, that's the time to do it and really maximize his nutritional development. So that's a really big opportunity in that bull, and it's not something that we can compensate for later. Thing to think about as a breeder and developer of bulls is how are we going to treat the dams of those bulls nutritionally, and how are we going to treat those young bulls, because we can't compensate for it later. Some really nice work has shown that the nutritional impacts in those first 6 months, we can't, if they're below average, we can't overcome that later in his life. And then really once we've weaned him and we've put him in a bull development program, and I think there's some really key factors. Developing those bulls at a moderate rate of gain is something that I think is really beneficial for those bulls going forth, and really making sure that those bulls, if we can, put them in an environment where they have to travel to keep those feet in really good condition, keep him using his legs. Young bulls are like our star quarterbacks, right? And so I think we need to think about not only their nutrition during that time, but also thinking about their physical status. And so we're going to ask these young bulls, often been sitting in pens, having all you can eat buffet, and then we're going to send them through the sale, and then they're going to be asked to go work. And that's really hard, right? Like, that's asking our star quarterback to go from sitting on the bench to go through 2-a-days really fast. And so thinking about how we can manage those bulls during not only their development period, but also as they transition into being part of an operation and really having to work for a living. Keeping them on the moderate gain until the time of sale, and then once they're post-sale, they go to their new owners, helping those bulls transition from having that all-you-can-eat buffet to getting to a point where they're ready to go work. Because we often see these bulls come out of sale and they just melt, right? Like, they lose a lot of body condition score, they're fighting for hierarchy status with a herd. And how can we help manage those young bulls that are coming into our herds?
Do you want to talk about that hierarchy status a little more and helping those young bulls out in those situations if they're going to be in, breeding groups where there's multiple sires and whatnot? Because some bulls are just worse fighters than others, and it's always, anytime you move bulls or pull one out and put them back, they're always going to fight a little bit.
Yeah, so kind of we can talk about using multi-sire bulls. If we're using multi-sire pastures, we want to try to keep, I think the school of thought a lot is that we want to put our younger bulls with older bulls so that they can often learn how to interact in a herd. And that can often have some problems because our older bulls are certainly going to be higher in this social hierarchy, and they're often going to keep those young bulls from breeding, which is probably not what we want as producers. Our younger bulls are likely to have those superior genetics that we're really hoping to implement. So what we can do is really thinking about using our young bulls, either in smaller groups of single sire pastures where we can, one, know that he is breeding and doing his job, because I think that is always a fear, is he going to do his job? And certainly putting them with a smaller group of females where we can watch them is one way. The other way, which is really, you have to have a high level of risk tolerance for this, is putting a group of young bulls together. And so trying to keep bulls grouped by age really helps with that social hierarchy. So keeping our really young yearling bulls together versus our 2-year-olds versus our 3-year-olds, etc., and are more mature bulls, and really trying to keep those social hierarchies together. When we think about kind of multi-sire pastures, and when we really think about rules of thumb for how many cows a bull should breed, a bull that's less than 3 years of age should probably only have a cow for every month of age that he is. So when we buy these 12-month-old bulls, we probably really need to only give him, if we're turning out when he's 15 months old, we only need to give him 15 cows for the breeding season. So pretty small numbers. And so you can kind of pick and choose how you want your operation to look and what value you want to get out of those young bulls. But when we think about kind of hierarchy systems, certainly age has a big role in that, and really thinking about how those bulls higher up in the social hierarchy are going to impact the breeding ability of those young bulls, because we've all seen those older bulls spend a lot of time running off those young ones and not letting them breed. So thinking about how we can integrate those, is there a way that we can put our younger bulls together or in single sire pastures until they really get going? Once they've been through one breeding season, we compare them with others. They should know what they're doing. And kind of on that same line, I'm a big proponent of parentage verification. I think that's one thing that we don't test in a routine breeding soundness exam is libido. And so doing parentage verification to see how many cows, how many offspring we really did get out of those bulls in a given season, and we know who's out there doing majority of the breeding, and do we have some bulls that just aren't getting any calves on the ground, because those bulls are costing us money. They're really they're a freeloader, right? And they're not really adding to our bottom line, but we're certainly putting resources into them. And how can we use that information to change how we're managing that cow herd?
So there, you brought up using, when they're younger, maybe one bull with a small group of cows to make it a single sire breeding group. And there's risk with that too. So when you say a small group of cows, are you talking about that 12 to 15 if it's a yearling, maybe a few more if it's 18 months to 2 years? I mean, what exactly do you mean when you say smaller group of cows with that?
Yeah, so in our young bulls, we're going to, if they're less than 3 years, we should only expect them in a 60-day breeding season. We can go 63 if you want 3 full cycles. So if we think about a 63-day breeding cycle, we only want to give that 15-month-old bull 15 cows. Certainly there's some risks in that if he's not getting cow settled. And we can think about reducing the stress on that bull by putting a cleanup bull in after that. So maybe that young bull has those 15 cows for 40 days, and then we put a cleanup bull behind him. So those are some ways that we can think about reducing the stress on single sire pastures. And it's a lot about how is best to manage. There's not 2 operations that are the same, but just thinking about different ways that we can manage those young bulls to get the full impact out of what we paid for them. Bulls are certainly not cheap, and they're a large investment for our operations. How can we maximize what he's adding to our bottom line?
Folks, if you want the full scoop on this conversation, be sure to listen to the full podcast episode on casual cattle conversations. You can find that on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and frankly, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. With that, happy ranching, folks.